Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha with the Paranormal World Show, and we have another good one for you. Now, we're coming to you from 44 different platforms around the world, and one of them is the Conscious Awakening Network. And you got to go visit those people. They got close to 50 different shows over there. And those shows, they have stuff that both you and me need to know about. I've spent some extensive time over there and I enjoyed every second of it, and I think you will too. Just go check it out at consciousawakeningnetwork.org. And if you are watching us on YouTube right now, then please subscribe. It'll help us all out. And that's the only place we are watching the chat room, so we can participate with you. And maybe you can ask questions if you like, and we'll see if we can answer them for you. So without any more from me, I have Gil Carlson with me. He's been here several times before, and he has written, oh gosh, 41 books or so. And you can find them all on Amazon. And there is one particular one we are going to deal with tonight, and that is the Reagan briefing of the extraterrestrial issue. President Ronald Reagan, he didn't know much about it. He was very interested in it, but that briefing we're going to hear about, that is quite extraordinary. So welcome to the show, Gil.
Thank you. And my friends out there, once again, I'm going to be discussing aliens and UFOs with you. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Roswell crash. First, I got to tell you, I have 3 books that covers a little bit about that. One of them is the Yellow Book. It's there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yellow Book. Majestic 12, of course. There it is. And tonight we're going to be discussing the Reagan briefing on Roswell.
Yeah, there it is.
And I think you're going to find this very fascinating. First, I want to mention a little more about the Roswell crash. It was in 1947, and was probably considered one of the most important of all the UFO crashes. It made a lot of people aware of what was going on with UFOs, and it was kind of shocking to a lot of people because there were alien bodies and one live alien recovered. Although the government kind of backtracked on that and tried to cover it up. And there was even a fairly recent report the government did on the Roswell crash. And I don't remember all the details, but they kind of like tried to make it was like no big thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can't believe everything the government says. They have reasons for doing things and covering up things, and a lot of it is for national security. They don't want a lot of this stuff leaked out, and they don't want our citizens running around screaming, acting crazy, like the sky's falling in.
Yeah,
But
that's why we have that saying that nothing has been confirmed until the government has denied it.
And yes, exactly. But one of the things to go by is government likes to claim until recently that there are no aliens and there are no UFOs. There might be aliens off on some distant planet somewhere. We'll discover someday. But actually, I believe they're here with us. I think there's enough evidence for that. But one of the things we can go by when the government says there wasn't much to Roswell, or maybe it was a weather balloon, um, ask yourself why so many man hours were spent by the army scouring the desert to recover every scrap of evidence,
Yeah.
and why did they threaten the civilians and made a great effort to recover any piece of UFO evidence that was being held by the residents. And they even threatened the residents of Roswell with jail and even death if they should talk. So I think we can.
I think we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I always say, if UFOs don't exist, why does the government try so hard to convince us that they don't exist?
Yeah. We have already answered that question. Yeah.
Let's get on to the Roswell crash. There was actually two UFOs that crashed in the desert outside of Roswell. And there's different theories about what brought them down. Um, but the captured alien EBE-1 claimed that they were hit by a meteor. But it's also possible that they were hit by lightning because there was a severe thunderstorm at the time. But the evidence I've seen, I believe it was this new powerful radar system we had in place there, and it messed up with their uh, communication system and caused them to crash.
I think also that I had a friend, he's gone now, but Colonel Wendell Stevens.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he was living here in Tucson, and I interviewed him 2 or 3 times on my TV show at the time. And he said that his intelligence showed that it was brought down by the brand new invention that the government had at White Sands, and that was the new radar system that somehow interfered with the airplane, and it became uncontrollable, and it was coming from altitude going down at a 60-degree angle and hit the desert.
Yes,
So
I'm an admirer of Wendell Stevens.
yeah.
He was very knowledgeable, and he was a good friend with the guy who originated the Blue Planet Project books, which I now run. But anyway, let's get on to Roswell. We've got the Reagan briefing on Roswell, which we're discussing. It's actually really quite amazing, the information that's in there, and it's something we can. I believe that we can trust the accuracy of this. It's a the briefing is a transcript that was made from a tape that was recorded at the time. And there have been some people who have seen this tape or heard this tape who verify that the voices are actually that of President Reagan and some of the other people involved in it.
Yeah, and back then they didn't have the technology to make fake material as we do today. This was quite a long time ago that tape was done, so I trust that tape.
It's interesting too that I've had some of the people reading my books who want to know if I can also supply them with the tape. I don't have the tape, and I've probably got myself in enough trouble just by having this transcript and releasing it. And I'm sure that tape is locked up someplace securely. But
this briefing, when that came out through your books now, that opened up the whole thing. And there really is no need for secrecy anymore because the evidence is there, and it just makes them look stupid trying to cover it up, which
Definitely. And
that's pretty easy for them to do, actually, because they are stupid.
but what's interesting though, now some people may say, Gil, this is old stuff. It was 1947, and this reading was recorded back in what was the exact date? 72, I believe.
Yeah.
I've got it here somewhere in my book.
Mm-hmm.
But what was revealed is information that is like, how am I going to say it? That applies to today about aliens and UFOs.
Yeah.
And a lot of information was revealed in this briefing that
Yeah, the briefing was quite lengthy. I think there's something like about 60 pages or something like that. If it's
well, it went
written out.
over on two days, it extended over 2 days.
Yeah.
But some of these information that's in there is like, well, what got me was the extreme security on
Mm-hmm.
this information. Um, Different layers of security and everything else. And I even reading about all that again, I felt a little guilty, but even putting this book out because they took such care not to reveal this information. And a lot of this information was so interesting. It goes against everything that's been said before. And it's
Yeah, there were several people that came to President Reagan, and there were about 3 or 4 people in the room, from what I see. And it was kind of amusing because they were trying to tell the President Reagan, this is what's going on. And he kept asking questions and interrupting them all the time. So it was just all broken up. But I guess that's what Ronald Reagan did. So it was kind of amusing reading it that way. But it got
and
really deep.
yes, and what I found interesting is he kept asking questions about some of this stuff, and some of the questions they weren't allowed to answer because it was into a higher level of security,
Yeah.
which often puzzles me. But it was, and also another thing I found interesting was they were talking about the CIA was talking about their disinformation program on UFOs and how they've misled us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let's get on with some of it here. First of
Yeah.
all, get a little information on it. Um, it was conducted by William Casey, who was the CIA director. And then there was the caretaker, who was the CIA custodian of this information. And he'd been the caretaker of this project since 1960. And they called this group that was in the revealing the called in the briefing, Group 6. These were all CIA, and besides William Casey and the caretaker, there was advisor number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4.
Mhm.
And another interesting thing is, as we got into this, and kept getting into maybe higher levels of information, for security reasons, some of these advisors were removed or they decided to remove themselves
Yeah.
because of this information.
Yeah.
But so what I want to do is start giving you some information from it. This in my book, the briefing is full in there. It it mentions brings up Reagan's questions, all the back and forth information, which is very interesting. But because of the shortage of time on this show tonight, I've tried to condense a lot of it. But the book, if you're really into this, you need to read the book because there's a lot of additional information in the back as well as
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
complete transcript. But let me give you a little information. It starts out William Casey's talking, and he says that since this briefing contains some very sensational and some very, very classified information, you will have to make the decision on who you want in this room. He was speaking to President Reagan, and he says, the stuff is pretty high up on the food chain. We call it ATS, or above top secret. This stuff has its own classification markings. We have a special container, special printers and copiers for this stuff. Every word of this material is printed on special paper, then placed inside special covers. The caretakers have taken special efforts to protect all this stuff from being released inadvertently or copied by some unauthorized person. So anytime they try to tell you, oh, this UFO stuff is nonsense, just think about that. All the precautions they've taken and the precautions to keep this information from us.
Yeah.
And with my background of all these different books I've written, trying to reveal all this information, I'm sure they're not too happy with me.
Yeah, you're on their list.
And yeah, I've been told that there are a number of people in the government who read all my books, but
yeah,
maybe to educate themselves. I don't know. But they go on to claim that that this is called top secret code word, and the information is beyond top secret. And it has its own classification, and it's very compartmentalized. And the briefing has the highest classification within the US government. And that's kind of impressive.
yeah,
And it kind of gives me shivers that I'm now holding in my hand
yeah. Well,
this briefing, which has the highest classification within the United States. But anyway, that's the way it goes. Now, the caretaker, CIA caretaker, who's in charge of this whole thing, takes over speaking to the president. And he says, the United States of America has been visited by extraterrestrial visitors since 1947. We have proof of that. However, we also have some proof that Earth has been visited for many thousands of years by various races of extraterrestrial visitors. Now, that's something I've been claiming for a long time now. And a lot of people may have doubted me, but here we have it direct from those who know and those who deal with it.
we have the evidence for that too.
Yes. And it goes on to claim that in July 1947, a remarkable event occurred in New Mexico during a storm. 2 ET spacecraft crashed. One crashed southwest of Corona, New Mexico, and one crashed near Daytona, New Mexico. The U.S. Army eventually found both sites and recovered all the debris and one live alien. And I'll refer to this live alien as EBE-1. EBE means extraterrestrial biological entity. It was a code designated to this creature by the U.S. Army back in those days. This creature was not human, and we had to decide on a term for it. So scientists designated the creature as EBE-1. We also referred to it as Noah. There was different terminology used by various aspects of the U.S. military and intelligence community back then. It goes on to say that all the debris and EBEs recovered from first crash site were taken to Roswell Army Field, Roswell, New Mexico. EBE was treated for some minor injuries and then taken to Los Alamos National Laboratories, which was the safest and most secure location in the world. And then special accommodations were made for it. The debris was eventually transferred to Dayton, Ohio, home of the Air Force Foreign Technology Division. And then the second crash was recovered in 1949 by some ranchers. There were no live aliens, and the debris went to Sandia Army Base in Albuquerque.
Yeah. And the second crash there, then everybody inside was dead, right?
Yes, they said the bodies of the dead aliens were transported to Wright Field in Ohio and kept in a form of deep freeze. They were later transported to Los Alamos, where special containers were made to keep the bodies from decaying. There were 4 dead bodies in the crash site.
Yeah.
And it goes on about how different arrangements were made for the bodies and everything else. And they claimed that the both crashed spaceships were of similar design, and the bodies of the aliens were all identical. They looked exactly the same height, weight, and physical features. And then he says, "Here are the photographs of the aliens." Okay, I don't have the photographs, sad to say, but they were being handed to Reagan.
Yeah, there is a few. There's a couple of pictures now floating around that supposed to show a picture of those. Of at least the first crash that they found in New Mexico. So, but then again,
there are some fake pictures going around too.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, but it's interesting, the description in here of these aliens, and which I don't think you're going to find anywhere else. And it claims they have similar characteristics of a human, or excuse me, they don't have similar characteristics of a human, with the exception of their eyes, ears, and mouth. The internal body organs are different. The skin is different. Their eyes, ears, and even breathing is different. Their blood wasn't red, and their brain was entirely different from human. And they said, well, we could not classify any part of the aliens with humans. They had blood and skin, although considerably different than human skin. The eyes had 2 different eyelids, probably because their home planet was very bright. And then the EBE-1 that they captured, they claim he stayed alive until 1952, and they learned a great deal from him. They were able to communicate with him after a while, and they claim
I guess EBE did not or could not speak as we do, but they communicate telepathically. They were able to tell him everything they asked about.
Well, also they performed some kind of surgery, because he didn't have the voice, whatever, that box or whatever we have. So they did some kind of surgery to enable him to talk too. And I believe it was his, getting off track here, but his special caretaker, the woman that stayed with him for years, communicated telepathically with him. There was a lot of information available on that that I read a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting, all the things they learned from him. And I don't see the government sharing any of that with us.
Yeah, and now this information now that ended up in the hands of, it says majority 12.
Yes. and they can probably read about it in my Majestic 12 book.
Yeah,
I reveal a lot of things in that.
that's oh boy, that's another chapter. I think it started out as Majority 12, and then they changed the name on the same program. Is that kind of what you think?
Yes, I'm not sure the exact details or when that happened. There was also I'm not sure if that was the name change, but there's also when information was leaked out about um, MJ12 that they made some changes and claimed that or they closed it down and reopened it under a different name or something like that,
Yeah,
just to throw people off the
yeah,
track. That,
yeah,
uh, um, but they also found out, well, he explained a lot of things about this EB1, EBE1, I'll get that
yeah,
straight, about what some of the things were on the crashed ship, um, the communications device, um, and things like that. And he explained where he was from. Um, he claimed to be from a star system, Zeta Reticuli, and that it's 40 light years from Earth, and that his planet was within the star system. But let's get back. Now we've got some information coming through from what the advisor number one, who, like we said earlier, is with the CIA. He claims that this is a very complicated subject, and it took him, excuse me, about 1 year to be fully briefed into all the aspects. There are different areas: initial crash, investigative period, some attempt at contact, and a disinformation operation to protect this matter and several other levels. It's
yeah. They're
interesting
good.
that they admit that.
They're good at that.
Definitely. Um, but I can't blame them. If I was in there, if I was in the CIA, I would want to do the same thing. But
Yeah,
I'm out here running loose and revealing everything.
I suppose knowledge is, they believe knowledge is power. As long as they have the knowledge, they have the power. If we don't have the knowledge, we have no power. That's their philosophy, I suppose.
Yeah, power is everything.
Yeah,
Also, he goes on to explain that that everything we know about they know everything they know about alien visitation to Earth is contained in 16 volumes of binders. These binders contain thousands of pages.
yeah,
Wish I had some of those.
yeah, that would be fun.
And he also claims that the that EVE-1 spaceship um, took 9 months to travel the 40 light years to get here,
Yeah.
which is kind of mind-boggling.
So that's about 4 times the speed of light.
But actually, they traveled at less than the speed of light. They claim that the spaceships travel through a form of space tunnels, and that gets to point A from point A to point B faster without having to travel at the speed of light. Uh, so
Yeah.
I think there's some information coming out on that now.
That's kind of like wormholes then, huh?
Yes, that's what they refer to those as
Yeah.
nowadays, wormholes. Um,
Yeah.
another interesting thing in here is they talk about the different projects involving alien and UFO information.
Mhm.
Um, that originally started back in 1947. It was called Project Gleam, and this contained volumes of documented information collected from the beginning of our investigation of UFOs and identified alien craft. But it was originally established in the early 50s by President Truman and then by order of President Eisenhower.
Yeah.
And then President Truman established a group of people to handle this project, and it was called Majority 12 or MJ12. Then it goes on about the changes to call it Aquarius Project, several other different names.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned some of the other projects, Project Grudge, Sign, and then the Blue Book. Interesting stuff about the Project Blue Book. How they shut it down and said that there really wasn't any worthwhile information.
Yeah, I think they talked out of both sides of their mouth, but I say, yeah, there's nothing to it. But they found quite a few cases that could not be explained except if you used one explanation, and that was of an extraterrestrial origin. So there was something that they couldn't explain away, but they don't want to talk about that.
Yes, but then they started right after that, took over with Project Aquarius, and looking for something here.
Yeah, Project Aquarius was very extensive.
Yes.
Now, MJ12 or Majestic 12, that comes from there were 12 people running the program.
Yes.
And they were in charge. Each one of them was in charge of different facets of the program. And I read a little bit about that, and you talk about that in the book here. And I tell you, folks, this is something that you kind of need to know, because once you understand what they are doing with the Majestic 12, which is still running, you understand what's behind it.
And
that's
those
the
12 people were pretty high up too.
Yeah. Yeah, most of them were admirals or, well, there's a couple of really top-notch scientists in there, but they had it pretty much sewed up until now when it started leaking out. The bucket, it's got a hole in the bucket.
Yes, they claim that the reason they shut down Project Blue Book was that if the Air Force continued its investigation of UFOs, eventually non-cleared and non-briefed Air Force or DoD civilian officials would obtain the facts behind Project Aquarius.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes on to explain that they couldn't allow that because, what it would do to the population, and disinformation would destroy our religious leaders and freak them out. And
now in there also they talk about the planet they came from the planet Serpo. And they talk about that they had two suns. There was a binary system planet, and it was very hot around the equator. Now, if they went further up towards the poles, then it was just like here. And they had vegetation, much of it like here. Maybe not the same things, but the same kind of meditation. So there was a cooperation between the planet of Serpo and the U.S. government, and so 12, was it 12 people from here that went to that planet?
Um, there was a couple of different stories on different amounts, but I think it was like 11 or 12. There was
Yeah.
different changes and things like that.
Hmm.
But the planet Serpo was very interesting, and the Ebens, their civilization, their society. There's so much information on this, but what really struck me was that they were so into um, experimenting, creating different alien races,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and messing with DNA, and later on in here it mentions how they created
Hmm.
several different
Yeah.
alien
They, they
races.
went to different planetary systems and collected DNA, and then they experimented and create clones of it. And they were there was scientific planet, but also it appeared to me as it was more like there's two different classes of people. The average people out in the bush, so to speak, they didn't know much, but there was a scientific elite that took charge and had all the information. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yes, it's like there's so much fascinating stuff out there, and they go on to explain in this briefing that there are at least five different species that have
Yeah,
visited us. Um, we have little intelligence on four of the five, but we have plenty of intel on the Ebens. They have given us everything we asked for. They've also helped us understand the other four species. It's kind of interesting. I wish we had more information.
yeah,
Um, they should tell us more about what they've learned.
yeah. But it also did say that four of them at least were very benevolent. They
Yes,
they were friendly, and then there was
yes.
one that wasn't.
And then the one that wasn't um, says here that we have intelligence that would indicate this one species of aliens have abducted people from Earth.
Yeah,
They have performed scientific and medical tests on these humans. To the best of our knowledge, no humans have been killed. But as advisor number one stated, the intelligence is from witnesses we haven't thoroughly evaluated. We haven't thoroughly evaluated this intelligence. Um, it's
yeah,
kind of interesting what they bring out about the abductions and things like that.
yeah.
Uh,
And I wonder though, what's your opinion on if they are the ones that is doing most of the abduction, then there are people that have been abducted on the ship. When they walk down the corridors, they see extraterrestrials there, but they also see humans with military uniforms from Earth.
yes, yes, you're reminding me of what I have in my alien abduction books.
Yeah,
I found that very fascinating, and and it brings back this whole thing about our joint abductions,
yeah,
the my labs and everything. But now I'm wondering if this hostile race they're talking about, and it goes on to describe it and everything else, but it sounds to me like the Greys.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And well, if they are hostile, which I think the word was used hostile in the report from the Reagan briefing, and the American government is working with them, that makes perfect sense to me because if the American government is working with them, they have to be the scuzzballs out there. Otherwise, they wouldn't work with them.
yeah, and there was some agreement we've had with
Yeah.
with some of these races.
Yeah.
I assume it was with the Greys, I'm pretty sure. And kind of gets into that later. But what struck me is they consider them to be a hostile race, although they claim they haven't killed anyone. That doesn't sound that hostile to me. And
No.
I mean, it could be a lot worse,
Yeah.
but another interesting point is something here that came out in the briefing. They claims that we have captured one of these hostile aliens. This gets into some very, very sensitive areas, Mr. President. I strongly suggest we end this discussion and move on to any further questions. So there's a lot more information that wasn't even brought out in this briefing that they shared with the president. It's really interesting what's in there.
And then I also read in there that one of the races that they talk about in the briefing, there was a very short little section on that. They say they could imitate looking like us, but they are
Yes.
not like us. They looked more like insects, and they're very, very scary aliens, but they look like us, so they could walk down the street and we would never know it.
Yes, it's mentioned here. Because I'm not sure if this really applies to anything. They're what they name them. They claim the 5 species are called the ebens, archcloids, quadloids, hepaloids, and then the trantiloids, which are the hostile ones. And that these were named by the intelligence community.
Which one of those is the Greys then, do you think?
It's got to be the trantiloids.
Yeah.
Says the ebens are friendly, the trantiloids are the dangerous ones. We have a trantiloid, but it is dead. We captured it in 1961 in Canada and had it in captivity until 1962. Wondering if that's the one that was shot at the gate in Area 51 trying to escape. Anyway, then it goes on to claim information about the trantiloid. Says all the information is safely tucked away at secure locations, including the devices and flying craft that we have. Some of the items are tested at Livermore and flown around Edwards, but they are kept in Nevada at the Groom Lake complex. Another interesting section here says we developed over the years a very effective program to safeguard the information. We call it Project Dove. It is a complex series of disinformation operations by our military intelligence agency to disinform the public.
Now, I also saw in the book you have a picture of the alien language, the written alien language that was found in one of the crashed discs that they.
Yes, it's kind of like hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
And I've always found that kind of interesting. I have more information on those languages. I believe it's in my original Blue Planet Project book. But anyway, I've always found that fascinating, but I'm wondering, now from what I understand, it's not just aliens coming to visit us, that we are originally, I guess you say, created by aliens and civilized, and the earth was populated with their help.
Yeah.
And they taught us everything. And I believe that our language probably came from them, was influenced by them. But anyway, that's another book.
Well, there's some written evidence to that. If you go into the Sumerian tablets, you will find exactly how we were created.
Oh yeah, that's some interesting stuff.
Yeah,
And it kind of like casts a shadow on what we're being taught in school and everything
yeah,
and our scientific knowledge.
yeah.
But a little more on this Project Dove and their disinformation. It because that always fascinates me.
Mhm.
And it's like you can't really believe what you hear, what's going on. You have to look deeper. But anyway, uh, part of Project Dove is we have some highly classified aircraft. In order to keep these aircraft secret, we tend to convince the public and press that maybe UFOs are real in order to make the public think that what they're seeing are actually UFOs instead of our own secret aircraft, even though we know maybe some of these sightings are of actual UFOs.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how it got from, saying that UFOs are product of your imagination. They don't exist, and now they're
Yeah.
telling us we need to believe in UFOs, and I guess we're being kind of gullible and follow along with all this. It also claims that the first person who helped them with this disinformation program was George Adamski
Yeah.
back in the early 50s. And there's something else in here too that I've always known is how they've influenced the movie productions
Yeah.
to get information across. Um,
Well, I think Adamski he was the real thing. It just that the ships that they were flying, the Venusians, look exactly down to the details, exactly like the German Haunebu 2.
yeah, there's a lot of interesting things there about some of these early like
Yeah,
German
yeah.
craft and stuff, and the whole thing gets a little confusing.
When they talk about their planet Serpo, uh, uh, what was their planet like? I know they were not meat eater. They didn't eat any meat, but they grew food and they had it was pretty hot. Is it what else? Kind of what was their planet like? What?
Um, well, I remember some of the information that the group of 11 or 12 or whatever went there had trouble digesting some of the
Yeah.
food that was grown there, and they ended up having to grow their own food separately or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Now, also, I see on page 53, I think it is in your book, there's a star chart. I looked all over that star chart and I don't find our solar system anywhere on it, but there was some really interesting spots on there. And here we go again with my nosy questions. It looks like a picture, but who took the picture? It's it came from NASA, I suppose. And I remember a while back there was a scientist that said he looked at some of those star charts and the pit actually what he did he looked at the picture of our galaxy, the Milky Way, and he said, yeah, they tell us that this is a artist rendering of the galaxy, but I'm looking at it and the pixels I get out of it, it looks like a real picture. So there we go again. Who took the picture? Are we actually out there so far
well,
away and taking pictures back? We just might if we are going to other galaxies. in the secret space program, we could take those pictures.
Well, if you go back to one of the previous shows we did together on my secret space program book,
Yeah,
it brings out a lot of information on craft we've had up there traveling through the galaxies for a long time.
yeah,
A lot of shocking things up there, a lot of strange things, and maybe it's a good thing we don't know everything, because it can mess with our heads. Maybe I need to put a disclaimer on my books that
yeah.
could cause mental problems by absorbing this information. But another thing I wanted to bring out here, I was talking about the Project Dove and how they
Yeah, and let me throw another one in
okay,
here. NASA is now building an engine that defies the Newtonian physics. They have admitted that. They this engine, they say, will be able to go faster than the speed of light. And then there are scientists coming out, theoretical physicists coming out and saying that if you go, let's say, to the closest galaxy about four light years away, uh, if you get into a tunnel, the black hole, and go there, you go so much faster. It only take you a couple of days to get there, and then you would be there way ahead of yourself if you were traveling in the outside. I mean, 4 light years. That'll take 4 years to get there, but in that tunnel, you could get there in a couple of days.
kind of mind-boggling, but there's so much
Yeah,
stuff out there, and and I think there's so many different spacecraft and different things we have in that secret space program, and different engines that because we've been learning a lot from the
yeah,
alien. And another interesting thing they bring out in this book here is um, that some of the craft that we've been flying um, or experimenting with were lent to us by the Evens.
yeah.
I always assumed that we had just recovered crashed ones that we were working on. But if we've got actual running ones that are being experimented with um, at Area 51, and maybe what's his name was wasn't lying about experimenting with
Yeah.
spaceships there.
Oh, yeah. I and in the briefing, they talk about that the technology of these societies could be probably around 1,000 years ahead of us. And if that's the case, they are even ahead of the secret space program because they admit that they're a few hundred years ahead of us.
It's in this book here about the government claims that they're at least 1,000 years ahead of us, and some of them even greater.
Yeah,
And it's very interesting.
yeah. And you get into what their planet was like. You get into their technology a little bit, and you talk about how they travel. And there's so much interesting stuff in here that I read fast, but it still could take you a few hours to go through the book. But I found something good on every page in it. So I see we're getting down towards the end here, but I would highly suggest um, go to Amazon and go to Gil Carlson, and you will find him just under your name, wouldn't it? Isn't it?
Yes, under Gil Carlson. Um, Also, there's a website,
Hmm.
blueplanetproject.com. There's a dash between each word. So
Ah,
it's blue dash project dash. Wait, I got that backwards. Blue dash planet
planet.
dash project.
Yeah,
Something
there you go.
like that.
.com. Okay.
Or just searching on Blue Planet Project will probably get you there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's
there's a lot of books there.
there. And then there's another one that have a lot of this stuff, and that's the Yellow Book.
Yes, that's
I
what I
would
mentioned before.
I got stuck on that one. That is yeah, there it
There
is.
is some crazy information in there.
So because the Yellow Book is that book was given to the American military by the extraterrestrials. It's not a book. It's kind of like an iPad, only a
Yes,
lot thicker.
exactly.
And when you think, you communicate with it, and it shows up, and it explains how they do this, and that's phenomenal.
It's
They
got
have the
like the history of our planet
yeah,
and everything in there. And
yeah,
it's like endless. And the government has been experimenting with that at Area 51.
yeah,
And they're still kind of haven't reached the end.
yeah. And they said to get through the information that is available through this so-called Yellow Book, it will take a lifetime for someone to assimilate it all.
Yes. There's a lot of amazing things out there.
Yeah, it is. Well, gosh, I think we're down to the end here, but there is more to come. And just go to Amazon and have a look at all these books, and you're going to find something that you just can't live without. So, anyway, I enjoy these. We have done several of them, and I enjoy every one of them because there is always something new.
And you've got some great people out there in your audience.
Yep, there we are. Yeah, that's true. They're people that ask questions, and that's why being in the chat room on YouTube is a good one because that's the place to put the questions, and then we'll see if we can answer them for you. Anyway, thank you very much for being with us, and
Okay.
we'll
Till
do it
next
again.
time.
We'll do it again. So we will see you then. And for those of you out there that like what you heard, if you are on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you are somewhere else, just like us and let us know that you're there. Okay, thank you very much. And until the next one, be good to each other.